So Rightmove is something that we all have access to, but very few of us actually know how to operate it properly and find great deals to add to our portfolio. And that's exactly what I'm going to be breaking down in today's video. For those that don't know me, my name's Jamie York. I've been investing in property for around 10 years now. And if you want to find out anything about property investment, scaling your portfolio, or anything around mindset and making money, then this is a channel for you. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Now let's jump straight into the video. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is breaking down a couple of properties that I've seen to make sure it matches criteria. And I'm going to be showing you exactly what I do in order to make sure it is one to either add on to my portfolio or for one of my investors in Aspire Property Group, which is my portfolio building company. And I'm going to be using something called Lendlord, which is the software that I use in order to analyze these properties. And I'll talk a bit more about them. And they also happen to be sponsoring today's video, so I will jump into that and show you a bit more as we're going through. So before we even go into Rightmove and go into the screen, what I think is really important is to understand your criteria. See, people go, is that a good deal? Is that a good deal? Well, actually, what makes a property a good deal is your criteria that you apply to it. And this is really going to depend on a lot of different factors. And this isn't the video to break down what that criteria should be. But it's really going to depend on your ability to make money, how active you want to be, and how much effort you want to do on each property. So for example, if you're going to buy, refurbish and refinance, that's going to be a lot of work on each property in order to do it, or you're going to be paying somebody like me thousands of thousands, tens of thousands in order to make that into a reality. Whereas actually, if you're just looking for a really good, solid return on your investment, then you're going to be looking at those straight buy-to-lets. For the purpose of today's video, what I'm going to be aiming for is an 8% return on my investment, which is a very safe and secure return on my investment compared to what I'd be getting in the bank today. So let's jump into the laptop. So we're on Rightmove here. Sounds really obvious, but let's put in your location for sale. And because I know my area really well and the returns that we're going to be getting, I know that I need to narrow this price range. Otherwise, we're going to do what everyone does and just list by the max price, looking at the cool mansions and stuff like that. So we're going to go 80 to 200,000. I'm so used to this, I'm still going to do it. Property type, houses. Whenever I'm finding a property, unless I'm buying the block or for my investors or myself, I'm going to be looking for houses. I don't like flats. I don't like freehold properties. And then what I'm going to do is go on find properties for now. And the first top tip I'm going to give you, I mean, today is a hot market, so we'd usually list by newest listed, but in most situations, we're going to list by oldest listed. The reason for this is it's really going to give us an idea of the properties that have been on for quite a while. So for example, this property has no chain and it's been on since the 9th of October. Let's assume that is true. A lot of the time they would have just left them on because estate agents are, if you're an estate agent, I apologize, bloody useless. And so they'll leave them on for a while. Or they'll use it as a marketing technique to get you calling up. But in any case, we're going to be scrolling through here and we're looking for these sort of 3-4 bed properties to have a good look at the properties that we're going to be looking for. And we're looking for ways to add value. Now, in this particular instance, I'm not looking for one that is back to brick that I can do a full refurbishment on, but I still might look at some. So you can see here on these photos, if I just jump on quickly, you can see my beautiful bathroom. I don't even know what color tile that is. Is it brown? Is it pink? Is it red? Let me know in the comments what you think. But you can see it's all right nick, this property. The kitchen's decent. Looking closer though, look around that cupboard, look at that ceiling. Yeah, the ceiling's sort of getting some water bits, an exposed boiler there. So bloody hell, I mean, that went from good to terrible very quickly, didn't it? It's got wooden ceilings. I don't know what to say about this. Okay, this is an interesting one that we've landed on, but for the sake of this video, let's jump into a couple that we found, and I want to break down these numbers for you. So what I found is this one on Paisley Grove in Leeds. It's a decent area. Let me show you through some of the pictures on this. It's in good nick, but unique is the word that I would say for this. You've got a green room, a blue room, a green and a blue room, and a grey room. And it just gets better as you go through. What is interesting about this is if we're looking at the size, so it is a 4-bed, but it is massive. So if you can see here my cursor on the screen, you'd expect that to be the house there, right? But no, it actually extends over. It's almost like this. It was originally 2 houses put into one, which I'd look into. You can see here from the floor plan as well, it is absolutely massive. It's 137 square meters, which is bigger than the average detached property in the UK, by the way. So to give you an idea, it is quite a large property. It's pretty well presented, probably needs a good bit of work, and these properties are very deceptive. Now, can you price up effectively without going to the property? No, you do need a builder to go in, so bear in mind this is subject to going to the property. Now, what most people do at this stage is they will call up the agent and say, hey, can we do a viewing? That is not the way we are going to do it. What we're going to do is understand some added figures around this property. So first of all, I know that the refurbishment on this type of property is going to be close to 20 grand. I'll end up coming in under that. Now, how do I know it's 20 grand? Well, I happen to know the property, I happen to know the area, and I know what I can get the prices done because I've got my own refurb team. But let's put in 20,000, and again, it's going to be very rough on this. And then the next thing I'm going to need is the rentals. So before we jump into that, let's just do some little looksy looks on this. Scroll down. A lot of people don't know this is actually there. Scroll down on the property on Rightmove, and you've got this tab here called Market Information. Now, what we're looking at, oh, sorry, gone to the wrong one there. Go on to Market Information, and it goes on to this here. And it's going to show you the closest properties that actually align with this, so you've got a good idea. Now, you can see from this property already on Highthorn Street, it is 0.1 miles away at 175,000, which is pretty bloody good. You can see from the photos on this, let me just show you, this is done to a good spec. And this is what we're looking at, because the purpose of this is understanding the end value of the property. I.e., if I'm going to go in and spend 20 grand on it, this is similar to what I'd end up looking at. Now, I know if you're from London, you're probably looking at this going, 20 grand a room. You know, I get people spend very different prices, but where I am, I know this will be around 20,000, subject to viewing on this. You can also see some at 300,000, like I'll click on it so you can see it, but it's not the same property. I mean, look at it immediately, the garden, the kitchen, like even if I did this up, this property is not going to look like this one here. Like it's massive, very, very different. And so this is where it comes down to really understanding your area as well, because you can't just look online and go, yeah, I know it. So I can see from here, very roughly 175, 175, 165, 165. If we said an end value of 170-ish thousand pounds on this, I don't think that's going to be crazy. The next thing I'm going to do is just a little look around this on Street View. So down here, you can go down and it's going to give you a really good idea of the area of this. You know, when people talk about walking the street, you can walk the street. Now, you might be looking at this, going, this looks like a really rough area. You know, it's not the highest end area in the world. You can see some Soldborn signs. You can see this is really common, by the way. Look at the gates on there, boarded up there. So you might look at this, and if you've never been to this area, you might go, that looks rough as arseholes. But because I know the area, I know it is very typical. And even as you go around, you can see some nicer bits. But even on here, that looks nice. Next door looks a bit rough. As you go down here, you'll end up seeing more and more with grills on, there you go, right there. Lovely little garden. Gates, metal gate on the front door, and it's really quite typical in these areas as you go around, and the more you explore these areas, the more you'll understand it. Things like shops and that are really important as well. Like that sort of shop's not going to really be any bother, nor is that. There's also the sandwich shop there, and then I believe the one right next to the property was a laundrette, which is just here. So you can see a laundrette there. That wouldn't bother me at all. Whereas if it were a Chinese takeaway and things like that, that can actually hinder getting mortgages on that. Okay, so something to bear in mind if there's anything to do with takeaways, food, any drinking establishment, pubs, etc., that is going to impact and limit the amount of lenders on here. So now we've got an idea of how much it's going to be subject to viewing, the end value of the property subject to viewing and doing some analysis, and the surrounding area. Okay, now again, what most people do is they will go out, view the property, run the numbers, then put it past the agent, but we don't want to do that. We want to actually find out as much as we can, and viewing the property should be the final 5% of what we're looking at. So we know that already. The next thing we're going to need to do is jump over and look at the rentals on this. So I've already put this in, and I can tell you already on this property, you're going to end up looking at about $800 a month. But the way that we're going to do this is by getting an address of this, putting it in. So we've got this up here, LS12 3LA. Let's just put that in here. LS12 3LA. And immediately you can see it's really tough finding a rental in this area. What you can do is go and filter on this and include let agreed. So the filter's here, include let agreed. And the reason for this, by the way, if I click here, let's say within half a mile, this is going to show you some of the demand in the area right now. So there's 13 available, including let agreed. That means they have agreed a tenant to move in. And by the way, they take them off really quickly on rentals. If I untick that, there's only 6 available. So over 50% is already rented in the area. That is a very good telltale sign. So again, bear in mind, this is a 4-bed property on here. Let's list by the highest on here. There's only 3 beds available on this. This is a nice spec. It's a 3-bed terrace property. This is also a terrace property. This is 750. Then you've got flats. You've got a 3-bed here, unfurnished at 700 or 695. It's all right. You've got a very basic rental standard on here. So I'd probably go off of this one at the top, 750. I happen to know, you can see a bit of damp in that property as well. Yeah, this is quite a poor or standard, very low standard refurb, I would say. But what I'd end up saying is 800 in this area. And again, I've got the added insight that I know the area very well. Quick tip on this though, and the second one will go through a lot quicker on this. You want to be looking at your local housing allowance. Not that you want a LHA tenant or DSS tenant, not that they're bad, but you also want to know what the local rates are end up going to be. Okay, so you can find this on your local housing allowance government website, and then you can click here with the rates. So a 4-bed, this is your weekly rate that you would look to achieve. And it's really good to know if you were to rent to LHA, you're going to get that. Quick tip with LHA rates, typically the city there's an LHA rate for the whole city. So even if you're in the high end of Leeds, where you're going to pay 300,000-400,000 a house, the LHA rate is going to be the same as if you were in the arse end of Leeds. Very good to know if you want to look at social housing, because most social housing providers will pay the LHA rent as a guarantee. Another video on that one, maybe later, not for now. So then we know that. We're going to jump over to Landlord, and here's where we want to find out some figures. So remember with this, when we are working out the figures, the price that's on Rightmove is there as an indication only. It's not there. A lot of people think if something's listed for 130, can I afford it? That's not what we're looking for. It's a guide. Honestly, for me, it's largely irrelevant. It's mainly to narrow the scope of properties I'm looking at. I don't care if this is listed at 100,000 or 150,000. It's not going to change what I'm able to pay for the property. Okay, so I'm going to go in here. Now, as mentioned, let me close some of these up. Close that, and close that. 132,500. So I'm going to put that in, and again, it's not going to help me understand whether I'm going to do it or not. 170,000, I think, is the actual property valuation at the end of this. I've put in the 800 already on that to show that rent. If you weren't sure, maybe you'd lower it, but I'm very confident on getting that figure. £20,000. Okay, is the refurbishment cost, and in closing costs, which is the legal fees and the mortgage, etc., I've put as 1750. It will probably come in a bit under that, but that is where I'm going to be. So this is the page that you're going to end up using on Lendlord. And as I say, Lendlord is today's sponsor. There's a lot that's really good about this. And what you want to be using Lendlord for is, as you're building your portfolio, it's kind of like Experian in that way, or Credit Expert for property professionals. And it's actually largely free. And the way that they make their money is by matching the right products to you. Very similar to Experian, Credit Report, etc. for your portfolio. So what you can do is you can add your portfolio to it, add your tenant details, track all of your profit and loss. But the thing that I'm most excited about on this is the deal analyzer. It's one of the best that I've seen out in the market right now. So let's jump into this, put it in all of the purchase details. And what I want to look at is the long-term assumptions of this. So in terms of the cash investment, remember the loan to value on a buy-to-let mortgage is going to be 75% loan to value. So I'm going to need 99,375, but I also need to add in the refurbishment costs, the closing costs, which are the legals and broker, etc., and of course the pesky stamp duty tax on property, which is a ball ache, but we do need to pay it. So all in, that is going to be £58,850. And the reason that's important is you need to know how much cash is going in so you can work on the cash on cash return, or the return on capital employed in property. So I'll go through that in a moment. The other things that you're going to need to change here is the mortgage rate. Now the default rate is something like 2.5%. I think a reasonable long-term mortgage interest rate is going to be 3%. So I've changed it to 3 there. And then on the operating cost, I would always put in £25 a month to factor in any insurances, 12% for the agent fee. Most agency fees are going to be 10% plus VAT, but most of you aren't going to be claiming that back. And then I think a reasonable long-term occupancy rate on a buy-to-let is 95% occupancy. And I've put the holding period as 20% in this, annual rent appreciation at 5%, and annual inflation a property appreciation at 5%, and that's going to give me a more holistic overview of the short and long-term returns on this property. So let's look at the details of this by scrolling up and seeing the first year metrics and long-term metrics. And I'll be honest, this is one of my favorite things about Lendlord. And by the way, if you want to try this out, as I said, the video is sponsored by Lendlord, and there will be a link below so you can try this out for free and really immerse yourself. If you've got a portfolio, add it in, because it will show you lenders where you can save. It will give you cash flow projections, capital growth projections. And one of my favorite things when I am analyzing a property is not just to look at the first year metrics, but to look at the long-term metrics as well, because you're going to see just how much of an impact capital growth has on your property. So we're looking at a net annual cash flow of 4,680, which is £390 per month. And already we are looking at a 7.96% cash on cash return, or very, very, very close to an 8% return. But the thing is, because we're putting in that £20,000 refurbishment and having it valued at the higher 170,000, we've also got some added equity in there. So the first year true return on investment, taking account of your rental income and of course the capital and capital appreciation at the end of that, you are looking at a 42.42% return on investment in your first year. And then looking at the long-term metrics, your long-term ROI, return on investment, over a 20-year period, taking account of that rental, the rental increase and the capital growth, we're looking at an 859% return on investment. Okay, that is a huge 16.76 initial rate of return, which is the future averaged return over a 20-year period. I think you would all agree that is pretty staggering when you compare it to other investment types. But let's compare this to another property. Okay, so we're jumping into the second property right now, and this is Pinder Grove, which is now sold subject to contract, which isn't a shock. Let me show you the photos on this so you can see it. So, okay, check this out. It's nice. It's already done. You can see this is a very, very different type of property. This would rent out very quickly. It's your bread and butter buy-to-let property, the boring, the vanilla buy-to-let. These are the ones that I love because they rent all day on this. And the guy that's selling this, Dan Pierce, is very excitable as a character. But anyway, so we've got the postcode on this, LS5LQ on this. And then you can see in here that some of these are very, very toppy. That's way too far away. The problem in this area is there's not a lot of comparables. And so you have to go off of experience and knowledge. And remember, if you're ever struggling for comparables, always call an estate agent or a letting agent and ask them their candid opinion. Just bear in mind that estate agents have a vested interest in this, that you want to make sure you're getting this at the best price possible. So I've put this in already. 109,500 purchase price. The property value is around that. It's not worth much more. Expected monthly rent, it'd be anywhere between 550 and 600. I put 575 as the average in this because I know the area very well, and as you can see from those pictures, it's nice. Okay, it's a nice property, and again, we're taking this back to our criteria, which we said 8% return on capital. So again, I've done 75% loan to value, so you've got around 27,500 in the deposit, plus the additional property stamp duty, plus the closing cost, which is 1,750. And hopefully you would agree, there's not going to be any refurb on that. Like, you might want to factor in £1,000, so that once you've got out all of the beds, maybe you give it a little repaint or any bits that you can't see in these photos, but it's very nice. Like, that is a nice property, one of the nicer ones I would have seen. So I've not put anything in there. Again, 3% mortgage rate, management agent at 12% and another 25%, and long-term occupancy at 90%. I think that's realistic, by the way, but you might want to tailor that. And really what we're looking for is a comparison metric on here for landlord. And you might want to make sure you've got some maintenance in there as well. So you've got these additional things. If you did have monthly maintenance and stuff like that, you might put in 50 quid, 100 quid, whatever it is on there. But this is more for an example only, not to break down how to fully analyze a property, which I've got other videos on if you want to watch those on the channel. So again, I've put in this 20%. Now let's compare this. The net annual cash flow is actually a lot lower. If you remember before, it was like 4,600 and something, £390 a month. This is only getting us 246 per calendar month. But here's where it gets interesting. The cash on cash return, or the yield, is significantly higher. In the previous property, we were getting 7.96% cash on cash return, or return on investment. With this, we're getting 9.14%. And here's where people get caught up. So both of them kind of match, but what one's the better property? Well, it's hard to tell because it depends what you're looking for. If it's the immediate return, then obviously the 9.14% is better than the 7.96%. The other good thing about this is you're needing about half the money. The other property needed 58 grand. This needs 32,400. But here's where it gets different. The last one needed a 20 grand refurbishment and the value was going to be worth around 170 at the end of this. This one's not going to have much movement because already it's a solid property, doesn't need anything. So the first year ROI on this one is only 10.5% because all they're really taking account of is the 5% increase in property appreciation over the year. Whereas the other one had a first year ROI of 42.42%. So it's around 4 times the amount in terms of the return. But here's where it gets really interesting. And remember, this is why I love landlord so much, is it's factoring in the long-term returns. And people in property talk about just the cash flow, but actually a majority of the returns in property actually come from the long-term capital appreciation. And that's why most people become millionaires, or how most people that become millionaires through property, that's how they do it, through long-term appreciation. And this is the long-term metric. So the long-term ROI with this property over a 20-year period is 990%, whereas the previous one was 859%. So both staggering returns over the long term, but that is a lot more on this. So the next is the initial rate of return, which is the averaged return over that 20-year period, which is 18.52%. Very, very similar to what we achieved before. So what does this actually show us? Well, what it shows is that actually with buy-to-let, a majority of you are looking to hold over the long term. And so you can't just analyze a property based on what it is today. But what it also shows us is that actually if you are looking over the long term, the 10, the 15, the 20 years, then you need to look at the initial rate of return, which most people don't look at, which as you can see here is an estimate of future annual rate of returns. So it's over the long term, in this case 20 years. And what this shows is that actually those small percentages based on today really don't impact the property investment over the long term that much. Instead, it's that capital growth that's coming in. So, as I said, this video is sponsored by Landlord. I strongly recommend checking it out. I've put a link below. Jump on there. If you've already got a portfolio, add it in and see the recommendations that come through. But also, it's really exciting to see the growth potential in your property portfolio over the long term. So make sure to add that in. And if you're new to property, it's going to be really good to get a really, truly accurate idea of how to analyze the short, medium, and long-term impact of your property investment. And you can add in the details of that. Now that once you've got this information, the final thing you want to be doing is calling them up and you're going to pitch them. You're going to pitch them the price that you're going to go through at, and this is where it comes in. Most people go for a viewing, analyze it, then work out the number. But now that you've done this way round, you've done 95% of it, and what I'd be saying to the agent is, hey, this is the property I'm looking at. I've run my numbers and this is what I'm going to end up achieving on this. Based on that, I would like to submit an offer on this property of X, Y, Z. With that in mind, is it worth me coming to view this property? I promise you, if you do it that way round, utilize Landlord in the right way, analyze the property in the right way to Rightmove, and then go and view the property, you are going to save yourself hours and hours of time, maximizing the opportunity of you getting the best property investment. So I know that this is a very different way of approaching this subject, but I feel this is the most comprehensive and right way of approaching these property deals. To give you a bit of context on this, we're doing around 20 deals a month on average on behalf of myself, my portfolio, and my investors just like you. By the way, if you're looking for a hands-free approach to building your portfolio, put APG in the comments and I'll be in touch with one of my team members. But this is the best way in order to find, analyze, assess, invest in property in 2021. So get on it. Get on Rightmove, utilize Landlord and the software to maximize your opportunities of analyzing these properties in the right way. And if you got value from this video, hit the like button, let me know what you thought in the comments. And of course, if you're new to this channel and you want to find out more about property investment, then this is definitely the channel for you. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.